just stumbled across this. I guess I'm gonna have this CBS. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not surprised at any of this. You're always hearing shit like this. Like with the EpiPen and these big multi-fucking billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies. I mean, they make excuses after excuse after excuse. Oh, this, that, whatever. Well, this guy that's on 60 Minutes, he's interviewing, he says it's all bullshit, and they can prove it. They can prove it. It's all bullshit. They make shit up, saying the cost has gone up, this, that, whatever. It's all lies. It's the most egregious form of corporate greed. And he's saying this might be the biggest price-fixing scheme in U.S. history. You know, it's bad enough that they're allowed to make all these drugs, the psych meds and whatnot, that wind up, you know, sometimes, you know, maiming, killing people, hurt, you know, and whatever, and they're not even held accountable for it, because and you're not even allowed to, or because they make so much money, they put on the market drugs that shouldn't even be approved, they bribe the FDA and all this crap, and now, I already told you, I think I told you that I was watching things on pharmaceutical companies trying to, I mean, they're just pure evil. I'm sorry. I do think every single person who works for any of these big pharma companies are pure evil. I do. I do. And now all these things are coming to light where it was unheard of to ever sue pharmaceutical companies, but they proved that these couple of the companies were fentanyl, you know, that's manufactured, that's man-made heroin, like 30 to 50 times more potent than heroin, and they were selling it, convincing doctors to prescribe it to people who didn't need it, and just all this crap. And now here's another thing. Anyway, I'm going to read it to you. This is what somebody's saying. You know, I'm already against pharmaceutical companies. I think what they do is abhorrent, and a lot of them, a lot of bad things go on. And this is another thing. Somebody was asking me about the deal with EpiPen, why those EpiPens got so fucking obscenely expensive, and the makers just make excuses. It's all about corporate greed. That's all it is. All the excuses they give don't wash. With this guy is interviewed somebody. I rewound it as much as I could. I rewound it back, but all right. So this is what this guy on 60 Minutes is saying. Like his name's Whitaker or something. All right, Whitaker. Yes. It might be the biggest price-fixing scheme in U.S. history. On Friday, Connecticut and a coalition of, people are getting fed up now, coalition of more than 40 states filed a 500-page lawsuit. It's about time. It's about time. Accusing the biggest generic drug makers of a massive systematic conspiracy to bilk consumers out of billions of dollars. It's a more sweeping version of a similar lawsuit the states filed in 2016 that's still being litigated. The generic industry vehemently, of course they do, denies the allegations. Congress established the current generic industry in 1984 to push prices down. The idea was that once patients on brand name drugs expire, I remember this. The idea was that once patents on brand name drugs expired, generic makers would compete to make drugs more affordable. That was what it's supposed to be. But 1,215 generics, many of them the most prescribed drugs, jumped on average more than 400% in a single year. Connecticut has been examining the generic drug industry for almost 5 years. Tonight we'll take you inside its investigation and show you how 2 dogged attorneys built the cases the state attorney general calls the most egregious examples of corporate greed he has ever seen. Yeah, I believe it. I told you I'm sickened. I'm sickened on multiple levels, but this is all new shit coming out. I'm just sickened with Big Pharma. Sickened. Okay. I told you down at Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, I went to the a whole thing called Psychiatry of Death, and they were whistleblower. I saw a whatever you call it. I went to a what do you call it? I went to a thing where the person spoke about all the inside shit and spoke about how the cover-ups and how they're supposed to make these drugs a certain way, and that the secret goal of Big Pharma is to have every man and woman and child on the planet on some sort of psychiatric medication. I'll never forget that. And this was a whistleblower who spoke at a gathering at a little. That's the biggest scam going as far as I'm concerned anyway. I'm not going to get into that. This is something different. This is how people need things, and the prices go way up, and it's sick. And the Big Pharma people make excuses, like with the EpiPen, that the EpiPen becomes unaffordable. And I watched something else where there was this drug that this person really needed, and if the base amount goes up so fucking high, the copay is going to be too much, even for someone who gets it mostly covered or whatever. But then there are things not covered, and I'll never forget, this person was like cutting her drugs she needed in half because she just couldn't afford to take the whole thing, and it was something for life or death for her. It was probably on one of these specials, 2020 or Nightline or whatever, and discussing the EpiPen, but there's other things. And now people are finally, states are finally, they're going to crack down on Big Pharma. Good, because it's sick. You throw that word around lately, the most egregious form of corporate greed ever seen. Right? It's, okay. And of course Whitaker has to say, well, they give these excuses, and this is William Tong. Is he the State Attorney General? Example of corporate greed he has ever seen. William Tong. It's an industry-wide conspiracy, and I think it answers one of the biggest questions all of us are asking, which is, why are prescription drugs so expensive? Everyone's asking that. Why are prescription drugs so expensive? And I think we know why now, because the prices of generic drugs are fixed, and there's a widespread conspiracy to rig the market. Whitaker, Connecticut Attorney General. Yep, he's the Connecticut Attorney General. Connecticut Attorney General William Tong says his office found evidence of price fixing by dozens of generic drug industry sales directors, marketers, CEOs dating back to 2006. How many drugs are we talking about, Whitaker asked. Tong, hundreds. Hundreds of drugs. Whitaker, what kinds of drugs? Tong, every kind of drug that touches our everyday lives. I'll give you an example, Bill. This is my bottle of doxycycline. Yeah, doxycycline went way up. I had to have that when I had the tick bite. And I had to pay, I remember it was like $50-something for it. This guy has to take it every day, which is not good for you. It's not good to have to take an antibiotic every day. He has to take it every day for a skin condition. And there is a conspiracy around doxycycline. And so sitting here today as the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut, I'm one of the victims. Whitaker, between 2013 and 2014, a bottle of doxycycline, this is what Whitaker's telling us, shot up. Isn't this sickening? 8,281%. From $20 for a bottle to more than $1,800. Now tell me that a bottle of doxycycline should be $1,800 and that it should shoot up 8,000% and I'll laugh in your fucking face, okay? This is sickening. It is sickening. And the excuses Big Pharma gives are sickening, okay? All about corporate greed. I believe that 100%, and anyone who believes otherwise is... All right, a bottle of asthma medication. Albuterol sulfate jumped more than 4,000%. Pravastatin, a cholesterol drug, up more than 500%. The sudden price spikes caught the attention of Congress, which called a hearing, the Department of Justice, which launched an investigation, and the state of Connecticut, which now has filed 2 lawsuits. Tong, this is a phased approach, and we're focusing on all the major players. Good. Whitaker, so it is your contention that these companies are putting America's lives at risk. Oh, yeah. Tong, yes. You know it's a $100 billion market. $100 billion market, people. We're talking about the drugs that America takes every day to live, and they're profiteering off of that in a highly illegal way. They're just taking advantage. The industry's... Oh, Whitaker's going to play devil's advocate. Not like I like to play devil's advocate. The industry says that the prices went up because of market forces and because of drug shortages. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Tong, these explanations don't wash with you, Whitaker says to Tong. Tong, no. They've said this to me, so Tong is saying, to my face. Whitaker, why don't you believe that? Why don't you believe them? Tong, because we have evidence, hard evidence in the form of text messages, emails, documents, witnesses that demonstrate clearly that it is all about, it wasn't about product shortages, it's about profit, 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 corporate greed. It was about cold, hard greed. Whitaker asks us, how can he say that? Because of what these 2 sleuth attorneys uncovered. Mike Cole heads the antitrust division in the Connecticut Attorney General's office. Joe Nielsen is his lead prosecutor on this case. They've worked together for more than a decade, reaching multi-million-dollar settlements with big names like Apple and Bank of America. This, they say, is their biggest case yet. Mike Cole, this particular industry, the generic drug industry, touches everybody. Joe Nielsen, 90% of all prescriptions filled in this country are filled with generic drugs. Yeah, generic drugs came up with after the patent for when someone does a drug, creates a drug. I remember this. I remember it was supposed to help we consumers if you have to take some medication. It's supposed to help you. Rapid price increases for some generic drugs catch users, but it's all about greed, because it was supposed to help you where they could compete for people to buy the generic drugs. You know, once the patent for the really expensive regular drug, then other people could make it, and it was supposed to lower prices, and instead, like they're saying, it's a secret conspiracy where it's all fixed across the board, so that people have to pay up a yin-yang, and some people wind up dead. You know, I watched this thing that said this was something they needed to survive, and it went up so high that she has to start cutting it. It's for diabetes or it's for something, and she had to start taking less, rationing it out for the month because she couldn't afford it. This New York Times rapid price increases for some sharing drugs catch users by surprise. this might run out on me, in which case that's all right, because what are you going to do? At least I'm reading it, even if I don't get to share it with you. 90%. Come on. This is easier to do in my mom's bedroom than up there where I used to do it. 90% of all prescriptions filled in this country are filled with generic drugs. Whitaker, in the summer of 2014, Colin Nielsen spotted a newspaper article about a sharp rise in the price of a decades-old generic heart medication called digoxin. So you read the article and something just didn't smell right. Cole, I guess you could say you get a little bit of a sixth sense after you do this type of work for a long period of time, which we both have. So we did a little bit more due diligence and we sent out 3 subpoenas. Whitaker, what did you think you would find? Cole, we were looking for communications amongst competitors. When you do this kind of work, it's really not one hot document, as they say, that's going to prove a case. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle, a piece at a time. Whitaker, the puzzle grew into a monster. 3 subpoenas turned into more than 300 to major generic drug companies, dozens of employees, and phone companies. Over the course of the investigation, the subpoenas generated almost 19 million internal documents and phone records. There were so many pieces Joe Nielsen couldn't make out the big picture at first. For more than 2 years, he was the only one working the case. He spent days at his office desk and many nights at his dining room table looking for patterns. He eventually bought software used by law enforcement to investigate drug cartels so he could analyze nearly 12 million phone logs. And this allowed you to do what? Nielsen, well, this allows you within 5 minutes to look at someone's entire phone records and see the history of who they communicated with when. Whitaker, Nielsen saw a picture emerge of a cozy relationship among industry competitors with lots of phone call chatter right before they increased prices, apparently in lockstep. Nielsen, we can see that competitor A is talking to competitor B 5 times on one day. And what that allows us to do is to go into our document database and look on that day at what they were saying. Whitaker, it all snapped into sharp focus when he matched phone logs to thousands of text messages from Heritage Pharmaceuticals. Nielsen says this exchange with competitor Citron Pharma showed collusion to increase the price of a diabetes medication. The text yes, that's the one I think I saw on a show. The text messages implicate 2 other companies, Aurobindo and Teva, the world's largest generic drug maker. We were raising... Oh, see, that's how they got them. We are raising the price right now, just letting you know. Conspiracy. The national accounts manager at Heritage wrote, we are raising the price right now. Just letting you know, Teva says. They will follow. Aurobindo agrees too. A corporate account representative from Citron answered, and we are definitely in to raise pricing. See what they're doing? Corporate fucking greed. They don't care if people die. We are definitely in to raise prices. Are doing this immediately. I'm telling you, they all make me sick. I think every single person who works for any pharmaceutical company is evil. There was a whistleblower who told about they heard pharmaceuticals. She couldn't sleep nights anymore. Where insurance companies, they're bilking the insurance companies, and that trickles down to the regular average Joe like you or me paying more, for co-pays and whatnot. And she couldn't sleep nights anymore because her company was convincing doctors to prescribe this potentially deadly fentanyl drug to people who didn't need it. It's supposed to be for people in stage 4 cancer, and they were giving it to regular people and bribing doctors and getting them. And oh my God! And she's like, and then on 20, there was on 20, it's like Nightline, how could you? Some special. How could you get away with it? She's like, well, the insurance company would say, so should I prove this? Is this you're using this for breakthrough pain for cancer for this patient, and how she would not lie, but that really is lying and couldn't sleep at night. She said she couldn't live with herself anymore. That's why she became a whistleblower. And all she would say was, yeah, it's for breakthrough pain, and leave out the for cancer part. And these insurance companies would think these people had cancer when they didn't. It's just awful. We are raising our customers 200% over. We are raising our customers 200% over current market price. So what's wrong with these companies talking to each other? Nielsen, if they were talking about their families, or a barbecue that they went to, there would be nothing wrong with it. But when they talk about raising prices and they agree to do it all, they agree to do it all together, then it's completely and totally illegal. Whitaker, take the case of the antifungal drug nystatin. As you can see with this graph, the price held steady at $68 a bottle for years, but in April 2013, Sun Pharmaceuticals almost doubled the price to $131. Right after the increase, there was this flurry of phone calls between Sun and competitors, Heritage and Teva. Nielsen, so you see a phone call between Heritage and Sun Pharmaceuticals lasting over 45 minutes. Whitaker, after dozens of calls like this, first Teva, then Heritage followed Sun's lead and jacked up the price of nystatin to $142 a bottle. Joe Nielsen also found messages, and then it creates a vacuum, because if all of them are selling it for the same price, people who need it have no choice but to pay that. I wonder if I hit my head last night. I feel like there's something right there. I could have been seriously hurt. I'm lucky that all I have is that, including oh, it's sickening. This is so sick. I don't know if this is recorded, but that seem to show companies, including conspiracy, because human beings need these, and if they all jack up the prices. Joe Nielsen also found messages and seemed to After dozens of calls like this, first Teva, then Heritage followed Sun's lead and jacked up the price of nystatin to $140, $2 a bottle. Joe Nielsen also found messages that seemed to show companies, including Pfizer, conspiring to divvy up the market for other drugs. Pfizer, acting through its wholly owned subsidiary Alter Ego Greenstone, entered into agreements. The lawsuit filed Friday states Pfizer, acting through its wholly owned subsidiary and Alter Ego Greenstone, entered into agreements with Teva and other competitors to allocate and divide customers and markets, and to fix and raise prices. It refers to this email from Teva as evidence. Tell Greenstone we are playing nice in the sandbox and we will let them have the customer. Tell Greenstone we are playing nice in the sandbox and we will let them have the customer. Play nice in the sandbox. What does that mean? Nielsen, avoid competing with each other. Take your fair share and don't go after anything more than that. Keep the prices as high as you can. Whitaker, but I thought the whole point of generic drugs was to have competition and keep the price down. Yeah, it should have been. But corporate greed. That's the point for us, but that's what the companies who are selling the generic drugs want to avoid. Tong, I think what we've come upon is that the generic drug industry is the largest private sector corporate cartel in history. Whitaker, what is the effect of that on you? Me? Average consumer. Tong, it's devastating. It affects health insurance, premiums and health insurance plans. It impacts Medicare and Medicaid. And it's a chain reaction that drives up the price of American healthcare to unnatural heights. Sick, sick, sick. Whitaker, we reached out to the companies mentioned in our report for comment. Pfizer, which advertises on this broadcast, denies any wrong. Of course they do. And says it has cooperated with the Connecticut Attorney General. Of course they're going to deny. It says its subsidiary Greenstone intends to vigorously fight the claims. And of course they're going to deny it. Of course they're going to deny, like Joe says. Sickening. Sun Pharma is committed to the highest level of ethics and integrity. We believe the allegations made in these lawsuits are without merit, and we will continue vigorously defend against. Yeah, without merit. So the drug that suddenly, out of the blue, goes up 8,000%, and that was justified, right, you fucking assholes? Like the one I told you in the beginning of this, 8,000% it went up, and they're going to say they're doing nothing wrong. Sun Pharma is committed. Sick. Oh, I hope they burn. No, figuratively speaking. I hope they go after them. I hope they have to pay out the yin-yang. I hate these people. What's going on? Oh, fuck. It went too far. Now I can't even. As a clinic that serves for the people of rural southern Illinois, I ran out of time. This is a federally designated healthcare shortage area, which is a bureaucratic way of saying there aren't enough doctors around here. 3/4 of the patients at this clinic are on Medicare or Medicaid. Both government programs set limits on reimbursements for the drugs. The rising generic prices have created a medical emergency for him. Since the government won't cover the increased costs, his patients or his clinic must, or people will die, like I said. We've been able to keep the doors open, but it's getting harder and harder. And with these tremendous spikes, it's a problem. It's not right what these pharmaceutical companies are doing. The impact of the rising prices is so great that it might put you out of business, Whitaker says. No question about it. We've had that discussion right here in this building. He worries his patients will suffer. So Dr. Plur has joined unions, pharmacies, school employees, and other plaintiffs that have filed dozens of class action lawsuits in the wake of Connecticut's investigation, all accusing generic drug makers of price hiking, fixing prices. That's a big fight for a small clinic in rural Illinois to pick. Dr. Plur, I think somebody has to raise their hand. Somebody has to say, this is not right. It's wrong what's going on. You can't put people in a position where they're forced to either pay their rent or buy food and forego their medication. And that's what's happening all over the United States. Tong, as an attorney general, I look at that and I say, how can they do that? Evil. And I think what we've concluded is that they know it's illegal, and it's not that they're too big to fail, it's that they're just too big to care. Whitaker, that sounds harsh. Too big to care. Tong, that's the only conclusion I think anyone can draw when they see this evidence. And so then you start wondering, why would they do this? Because there's just too much money to be made. Sick, sick, sick. Connecticut Attorney General Tong told